Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Attitudes with Andy. My name is Andy, and this is a place to learn and grow together from the wonderful guests that we have on. And today, we have our very first repeat offender. We have Mr. Tyran back on for the second time. If you didn't listen to Tyran's episode, it was absolutely beautiful. We got amazing feedback. Was wild. And we were talking about sex, intimacy, and relationships because Mr. Tyran is a, what would you say you are?
I'm a human. I'm a sexuality and relationships masculinity mentor. I coach men around sex, relationships, emotional processing, learning how to understand what's going on inside their body and make rational sense of it and process it and communicate it. And then also learn how to deal with their own sexual desires and quirks and queries and, bring that into their relationship so that they can create amazing, passionate lovemaking with their partners.
Love it. You described that way better than I would have. So the beautiful Tyran is on, and today we are going to be talking about heartbreak because it can be an extremely painful, maybe even lonely experience, and I'm really excited to talk about it with you because I know when I was going through it, I thought I was crazy, and I have a few friends going through heartbreak at the moment, as I mentioned before. So, yeah, I'm really excited to talk about heartbreak. So, I'm curious though, what? Why are you laughing?
Because it's such an intimate and emotional topic. So it's like to be excited to talk about it it's just very contradictory in the statement. Okay. That's all.
Oh, well, the reason I'm excited is because
I understand why.
Oh, okay. Well, no, just because I'm like, I hope people find comfort in this conversation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it is. It's one of the most lonely moments of any human's life when they go through heartbreak. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. And is heartbreak something that comes up a lot with your coaching and mentorship?
Most of the time I work with men who are coming off the tail end or in the heart of, like, center of heartbreak. Like, by the time a man comes to me, very rarely is it because he's being proactive. Normally it's because he's being reactive to his partner or ex-partner saying, change or I'm leaving you, or I am leaving you, and he now wants to change. So yes, it's very prevalent in the work that I do because most of the time the men that I work with are either going through it or are probably going to go through it.
Okay. Got it. So why is heartbreak so freaking painful? Because before I experienced it, when people are sad about breakups, I'm like, yeah, it's sad, but whatevs. Sorry.
Just move on. There's plenty more fish in the sea,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when you're
8 billion of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And then when you're in it, it's like
you want to kill yourself. To put simply, like many, many people want to kill themselves when they're going through heartbreak. It's a real thing. I myself have been on the borderline a few times.
Wow.
For sure. Because you want the pain to stop. Like the pain is just so intense, you will do anything to stop the pain. And unfortunately, because we don't get taught how to deal with emotional pain, specifically as men, like our society doesn't teach anyone to deal with it very well, but typically and generally speaking, it's more accepted for a woman to be in a prolonged emotional state than it is for a man. And so, it's, that whole man up, get over it, deal with it. Sure, a man should learn how to control his emotions, but that doesn't mean he should suppress his emotions. And so, you just want the pain to stop and you'll do anything to make it stop. And that's why suicide is way more prevalent in men than it is in women. Because men just want the pain to stop.
Wow, that's so true. Because I guess if a girl's going through a breakup, society might be more like empathetic and like it's okay to be sad and all of that. But then if a man is doing it,
typically speaking, yeah, these are generalizations, but they're generalizations because it's generally accepted.
Yeah,
100%.
Wow. Okay, so how do we go about dealing with a heartbreak? Like your first one, I feel like for me anyway, was my worst one because I didn't think that it was going to end. Like I literally thought I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life. And then like the second time around, I was like, okay, we walked this road before. There is light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, how would you recommend? going about heartbreak?
Well, I don't know if it gets easier. I think you get better at dealing with it, is my perception. Like you just said, okay, this hurts, put simply. But I have experienced a feeling like this before. And so there is at least some conscious knowledge, potentially, of this will pass. But how do we make it pass faster? You know, like, I am of the belief that all emotion resides inside the body, right? That's where it comes from. It stems from something. And I won't go into that topic because that's a whole podcast into itself. But, you know, it stems from the place that makes us human, let's say. And how do we process it? Like when you're angry, right? When you experience anger, when anger comes up in your body, you get hot, you get sweaty, you know, like blood starts to move through your body faster, your heart rate will increase. And that just happens. And so if you suppress that anger and you ignore it, where does all that energy go?
In your body?
Yeah, it stays in your body. It doesn't go anywhere. And so, like, that's why a lot of that's why stress is, you know, a big precursor to a lot of disease, because we don't move the stress out. We just bottle it up and contract. And so for me, heartbreak's the same thing. Heartbreak is an emotion. It's emotion moving through the body. It's the feeling of separation. It's the feeling of loneliness. It's the feeling of unlovability. It's the feeling of inadequacy. It's the feeling of, like, all the parts of you that do not feel loved come to the surface because your external experience is showcasing to you that you're not lovable, because the person that you loved and said loved you probably hundreds, if not thousands of times, maybe for a very extended period of time, has now just left. And so all of the parts of you that have never felt loved or don't feel loved, or maybe did feel loved in the relationship that have never been loved before, now go, well, there must be something wrong with me. And so now those parts, you know, whether it's your sexual preference, whether it's your quirky, you know, we all have quirks, maybe it's your quirky language, maybe it's your little insecurity around your cooking skills, or maybe it's your, you know, like you've got a mole on your back leg and you've always been insecure about it, and he's like, oh, I love, or she's like, I love that thing about you, and now they're leaving you. And so it's like, oh, it's because, you know, like whatever the story is you have of your inadequacies or your insecurities, they come to the surface during heartbreak. And if you try to override it with just pure rationale, right, like pure consciousness of like, it will be fine, I'll get over it, you're not giving all the screaming emotions that want to be loved space. And so then that's what happens, that if you don't deal with it, then you carry that over into your next relationship, or you carry it on with you in life. And that's why we see so many women that hate men and men that hate women, because they're still carrying the heartbreak and the pain from previous heartbreaks and relationships, and they don't take the time to deal with it, and then they can enter the next relationship full of love again because they've learned to love themselves.
Whoa. Mic drop. I have so many questions. So the first one, this is classic. You're just like, what? The first one, so it's really common to actually think like, is something wrong with me? Like, to doubt yourself.
100%. We've all got our stories, you know. Oh, my teeth are crooked, or my face is not symmetrical, or I've got too much wrinkle around my eyes, or my boobs aren't big enough, or my dick's not big enough, or I'm not muscly enough, I've got too much fat, not enough, like whatever. We've all got like, in a society where everything is posted on social media and there is so much imagery and photography and Photoshop, we all have stories about our own inadequacies. I don't earn enough money. I don't have a nice enough car. We couldn't go out for dinner often enough. I couldn't afford to take us on holidays. I couldn't give him children. Like whatever they are. I'm talking from men and women's perspective. My hair's too short. I look too much like a man. I look too much like a girl. I don't have enough feminine energy. I don't have enough masculine energy. I'm not blah, 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 blah. Like, we've all got scripts and scripts and scripts of stories of our own inadequacies. No one will ever judge us as hard as we judge ourselves.
Wow. Oh, that was so comforting to hear. Sad that we do that.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's also making me feel less crazy. Is it common to feel crazy when you're going through a breakup because you're just thinking and saying the same stuff over and over again?
Yeah, because you can't break. You're in a loop, right? So I have part of the part of the academy that I run, and I teach men emotional processing tools, and I show them this infinite state loop, right? So it's a map, it's an infinity logo. And so there is an experience that you have, right? So a real life experience, and you will have that experience. And then the other side of the infinity map is the meaning and the story that you attach to the experience. And so you may have an experience. Let's say, I'll use you as an example, right?
Okay.
You're with a dude.
Mm-hmm.
He cheats on you,
Ooh.
right? Ouch, hurts.
Ouch.
You have an experience. That creates a state of emotional being and consciousness, right? You're like, he cheated on me. He cheated on me. So now you're having an experience, right? Internally. What's the meaning you attach to that? I'm not good enough. I'm not attractive enough. I'm blah, 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 blah. It's all about, you make it all about you. You don't make it anything about him, right? And so then what happens, the meaning that you attach to their story reinforces your emotional state or your self-belief, okay? So now you're just in this constant, infinite, because then what will happen is you will now look for more experiences that reinforce the story that you have. And so now you're in this infinite state loop of consciousness of all men are cheaters. Because what's going to happen is you're going to hear a story. You won't hear the story, you'll hear multiple stories of relationships, and the ones that go, oh, we've been together so long and it's really lovely and blah, blah, blah. You'll hear it, but it won't absorb into your consciousness and into your being. But you'll hear another story of oh, he kissed a girl, or he did, when you're like, fucking asshole, yeah, all men are cheat. And you will absorb that story more because you've got a form of identity wrapped around it. And so then what happens is you form an identity, all men are cheaters. And so what will happen is you'll just attract men that cheat on you because that's the vibration that you hold.
Damn, okay.
So unless you deal with that and break it, that's going to be the story for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And if you don't attract a man that cheats, then you will provoke him to cheat to reinforce your story.
Whoa.
After a couple of years or a couple of months, after, let's say your history is after 12 months, every man cheats on you, and you meet a man and he doesn't cheat after 12 months, you'll be like, where are you going this weekend? What are you doing? Why are you working late? And you'll start to create subconscious patterns, and you'll cut love away from him because you are expecting him to cheat. And so you'll go into protection mode and you'll shut off, and then he won't feel loved by you. And so he'll want to go get loved by someone else, and someone else will love him and he'll cheat. So you provoke the situation. And if that doesn't happen, if you provoke and he still doesn't do it, then you basically just keep running the story that he's cheating, and you'll distort reality, and you will just leave and say that he was a cheater even when he wasn't.
What? This escalated so quickly. Not quickly.
Select, provoke, distort.
Wow.
You will select people to reinforce your story. You will provoke people to reinforce your story. You will distort reality to reinforce your story.
So it's really important to break the stories?
Yeah, it's really important to process I'm going to say scar tissue instead of trauma. Don't like the word trauma. I think it's overly used.
Yeah.
To process the scar tissue from the painful experience that you had from the wound. There was a wound. You need to heal the wound, and then come back into the dating world having, removed all the scar tissue from the previous experience.
Right. So people who bounce from relationship to relationship, are they avoiding that processing?
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Unless it just happens.
Yeah, look, there is exception to every rule. Yeah. And I do believe that some people meet people at the right time, at the right place, and that's fate, or, that's perfect timing. And yet there are stories of that, and amazing and beautiful, and I wish them all the luck in the world. It's the exception, not the rule.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Most people carry their emotional experiences from one relationship to another because they don't take the time to grieve it properly, which is ultimately what it is. It's grief. You need to grieve the relationship and let go of the love and attachment you have to the person and the story of the future that you had.
So what you're saying is that you're going to go through a shit time and you need to grieve it and process all the emotions.
100%.
And allow yourself to feel it all.
100%. So, I was open relating, and for those that listened to the last podcast, I was in a open relating polyamorous stage of my life a few years ago. Did that for about 3 or 4 years. And I had a partner. We were only together 9 months, but we traveled 7 countries together. had long distance relationships, were open relating during the whole process. So it was really intense emotionally, and we did things together sexually that I never thought a woman would ever be okay with doing. Like I have my own fantasies, as you do, as everyone does. And I'd been with a few women, but there's always that like, women won't really like me if I want to do this with my partner, and she was open to pretty much most things, and that created, I then learned to love a part of myself that I didn't fully love by being in that relationship, because, she was like, no, that's hot, let's do that. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. I was like, oh my God, so my love for her increased because she was helping me love an aspect of myself. And that's what happens in relationships, right? Two people together over a prolonged period of time. If you've only ever dated for 6 months, 9 months at a time, maybe even a year at the most, you've never reached that depth of like finding what's beneath the surface. And I know her and I were only together 9 months, but when you actively and consciously push the edges and like, okay, what is it about yourself that you don't love, and how do I help you love those parts? And that was a massive part of our relationship. You create more attachment to this person because that part of you has never been loved before. And so you put the expectation or I've never loved this part. No one else has ever loved this part. If you love this part and you let it come out, I now have attachment to you being responsible for that part of my self-love. And so when they leave, obviously it really hurts because you've attached that part of you that's now acceptable to them. And so if they leave, the journey specifically is to find the parts of you that this person helped you love and learn to love them on your own. That's the grieving process. So grieve the relationship, but with and if there are moments of just pure crazy emotion where there is no thought, then just express. I used to watch romantic movies and just fucking cry and cry and cry for fucking hours, I'd work, I'd do my workouts, I'd do my work, I'd do everything that I had to do. And the moment that I didn't, I would just grieve. Right. And ancient tribes used to do this for, someone would die in the tribe and they would have a 2-week grieving process. So no one did anything in the tribe. The whole tribe would just grieve and mourn the death of this person. And then after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever time they had allotted, they would be, okay, grieving process is over. Now we get on with life. But they honored the emotional process of each human needing to grieve the loss of this beautiful tribe member, whoever it was. And obviously the family was allowed to grieve potentially longer than the tribe, because obviously tribe life has to continue. It's really fascinating, but grief is a massive, massive part. So, and I believe that the grieving process specifically in relationship is, what was the attachment to the person? What were the parts of you that they helped you love? Really focus on loving them on your own, and that will speed up the grieving process.
Right, instead of trying to push it off and numb and distract yourself.
Yeah. So for example, my ex-girlfriend, it was my sexuality that she helped me love, right? It was aspects of my sexuality that I'd never shared with a partner. Sure, I'd done it with casual women and stuff like that, but to actually be seen in that repetitively with a partner who I had a stronger emotional connection with, it allowed me to love my sexuality more. And so when she left, I had to learn that I can now bring that part of me to every relationship that I'm going to be in for the future, rather than go, oh, well, I have to kill that part of me again. I have to shut it off. And that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people shut off that part and then they never bring it into their next relationship because they're afraid of it getting hurt again, which is completely rational. The downside of that is they never create the same depth and intimacy because they're only showing up in that relationship let's say 40% or 60% instead of 100%.
Wow. I love that you talk about the grieving process.
Oh, it's imperative.
Yeah. And how long, I know that it's different. It's different for everyone. But some people, think that it's crazy. I got, one of the questions was, I broke up, over a year ago and I'm still hurting and it still is painful. And it's like, but that's okay, right?
Yeah, absolutely it is. So, it took me 18 months to grieve my 9-month relationship, okay? Because the depth that we traveled in that 9 months, I'd never experienced before, okay? And so, even now reflecting on it, I'm like, fuck, we did things that I may never do again, right? And I had to grieve. And, part of it was COVID, and also there was a whole another experience there that made it really hard. Like I watched her fall in love with someone else in front of me at a training for 6 weeks, which was like the nail in the coffin. And then I came back from that, and that was when COVID just started. So I then moved to Byron and lived on my friend's land in a treehouse during lockdown. So I was literally living in the middle of the rainforest in a treehouse for 6 months. And that was what I needed. Like I needed to completely disconnect from her, because in that year that we were broken up but not together, but still communicating, we were still engaging, which was keeping that thread alive all the time. And that was part of the issue, was that she had this manipulative power over me, and I just couldn't drop the hammer. I'm not making her responsible for that. It was me. I just could not say no. And so it took that really intense experience of watching her fall in love with someone for me to go, okay, I'm not talking to you. It's not that I don't love you. It's because I love you so much that I now need to put in a boundary of, don't message me, don't talk to me, don't nothing, because I need to forget about this for a period of time so that I can process it. And then that took me 6 months from there. And at some point, there's the old saying of like, to get over someone else, you've got to get under someone. Specifically women, obviously, because not most, but traditionally, missionary style is traditionally the most common sex position. But there's truth in it. Like at some point, like
really?
I'm not saying go have sex with someone the day after you break up, right? Like that's not smart or right. But during the grieving process, go on dates. Like you need to, yes, it's important to grieve and be with all of your emotions. And at some point you need to be taking actionable steps to pull yourself out of the grieving process and put yourself back into everyday life. And so I'm not saying go and have sex with a random after 3 months or 6 months or 1 week. What I'm saying is go on a date. It may lead absolutely nowhere. 15 first dates, you may hate every single one of them. But at some point, you've got to start putting yourself back out there, because mentally and cognitively, going on a date is taking you away. It's putting the frame in, you are now single, rather than I'm still attached to my ex and I'm still in a relationship and I'm still processing the grief. So yes, process the grief, process your emotions, journal, write, watch romantic movies, eat tubs of ice cream, exercise, work hard, whatever you need to do, and start putting yourself in situations where you can meet other people, and even if it's just coffee, it doesn't matter. Absolutely. I was with a woman for probably 6 months, and after my ex, and we weren't locked in, and we both knew that, but I had so much, we would make love, and then the moment after, I wanted to run away.
Because you'd been hurt?
Yeah, everything in me was like, oh, okay, go, leave. And it was like, okay, can I just sit with this part of me that wants to fuck off and run away? Because this woman is not trying to force me into a relationship. She understands where I'm at. She's very lovely, very loving, very kind, very compassionate, very, soft and gentle. And there's absolutely nothing that she's forcing. And it was all my own internal stuff. And that 6 months together, there's a part of me really hates the way that I showed up in that, because I was nowhere near my full self, while at the same time, it was exactly what I needed in order to help me process all the parts of me that wanted to run away from intimacy and being seen and creating deeper connection than just sex. So that was a massive part of my own grieving process.
With the going on dates thing, Yeah, so it's not like straight away. Don't try and like avoid, but it's just, that's interesting because I remember being like, okay, Andy, let's just like go on a date so that you can prove to yourself that this man is not the only man in the freaking world.
Yeah, 100%.
But then I think I purposely picked someone who I knew I wouldn't actually like, who would be nice. And then after meeting him, like we just went for coffee or whatever. And then I was just like, oh, but he's not like, you know, the guy I'm trying to get over. He's not this and this. And then it made me like feel even sadder.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, when you're talking about, you know, the casual relationship you had for 6 months, I remember when I first liked someone after my heartbreak, I was like, oh, there's hope again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it was, you just have to understand that it's all a process. And you know, committing to the process and not looking for the next one. You know, and like that's part of the problem of like, well, when am I going to meet the one? The one that's going to save me, the one that's going to love me, the one that's going to be better than my ex, the one that it's like commit to the process of being the best version of yourself. And there is no one. You work on the one. You know, like the one becomes the one through fucking time and effort put into the relationship, you know. Sure, there's that initial spark that creates more charge and more curiosity. I'm not going to deny that. Yeah, but it's an unfolding process.
So if people listen to this and they're like, cool, I have to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
I have to feel all the feels. Does that mean stopping everything in your life and just being sad and wallowing? Or does it mean doing things as best as you can, but having grace and also feeling it all?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. Like we don't live in a world where you can stop, unfortunately, right? Like, I mean, some people have that luxury, which is awesome. Good on them. Predominantly, most people that listen to this, you don't have the time or space to just stop life for 3 months and grieve. So, it's like do everything with grace, you know, do everything with compassion in your heart for yourself first, and communicate to the people in your life. And if these people in your life condemn you or shame you for it, they're not people that you should have in your life. That's simple, right? So, and you want people that are going to challenge you a little bit too, right? Like, I don't want my friends to give me permission to stay stuck in a emotional rut. That being said, I want them to have compassion for the process of feeling and coming out of it. You know, like I've got some mates who are in a bit of a rut, you know. It's been a big journey for him over the years, and there are times when we have conversations and I try to help him, and there are times when he reaches out and I say, I'm not telling you anything because you don't listen. You know, there are times when I have deep compassion and hold space and communicate, and there are times when he reaches out and I say, mate, until you do the other things I've told you, I'm not having this conversation with you. And it's not because I don't love you or have compassion. I do, but you're not moving anywhere. And so I'm not going to just repeat myself. And it's a way, and so I still have compassion for the process, but I'm not allowing the infinite loop of like negativity that he can be stuck in sometimes to suck me into that space and play the victim story with him and reinforce that victim story. And so that's a dance that comes, you know, like I'm probably better at it than most because it's my job, and it's a part of what I do is to like help people navigate out of those spaces. But I think people are inherently smart, you know, like if you're good friends with someone and they're going through heartbreak, you're going to have compassion for it for a time. And then there will be a natural time when you go, hey, you've been dealing with this for a long time. Like, I think it's time you fucking moved on.
Yeah.
You know? And obviously there is a way to say it, but sometimes as friends, you don't have to say it right. You know, it's not about getting everything perfect as long as there's love there.
Yeah.
So yeah, ultimately go to work, do like routine. Like when you're in heartbreak, nothing feels certain. Everything's like lost and you're in this wild, chaotic, like, oh my God, there's a black hole of the void sucking life out of me and I feel empty all the time. And the only way to get over that is, or the only way to move through that is to like, okay, well, what is consistent in my life? And can I be consistent in my life? You know, like if you go, so another time that I had heartbreak, right? This first time that I probably was like, this is the one. We're going to get married. We both have visions of having a baby boy together and blah, blah, blah. Long story short, open related. She had sex with another dude, left me for the dude. They're now married and have a baby.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was very intense. Real deep heartbreak, that one. Like intense, but short heartbreak.
Because you had the strategies to deal with it?
Well, that was the first time I was at the mystery school training in New Zealand, and basically I was a week and a half in when she said, I'm not coming back, I'm staying with him. And so I was in a community of people that just fully allowed the emotional process to go. And so that I just was allowed to go all the way into the heartbreak every day. And they didn't at times they would console me, and at times they would just let me do it. And at times they would tell me to get the fuck up and move on, And to be loved through the process, 6 weeks later, I was better than I was when I met her. I was just full of oh my God, I can be heartbroken, absolutely, to the point of what's the point? And then I went to the north of New Zealand and saw her and saw him and shook his hand and told her that it wasn't she should have come in and told me face to face, not via fucking text message and stuff. And then I drove home and I was like, I'm indestructible. It was this infinite realization of nothing will break me.
Yes.
And that was a super powerful moment, and from that place I was like, I can love everyone all the time, in no boundaries whatsoever, because I can always deal with a broken heart. Until the next one. So yeah, but it was a really potent thing. And so one of the things that I used to do, she was a really good cook. She used to make me this awesome breakfast, mashed mango, mashed banana, mixed together with cacao powder and maca powder and fruit on top. I started making that breakfast myself every day.
Yes, king.
Yeah, it was one of those ways of reclaiming. I was like, this breakfast is amazing. And I was so being able to eat outside of what I would normally eat was part of our connection, It was oh my God, look at all this awesome way to eat food that I've never thought about before. And so I just started doing that for myself. And so that was a reclamation of, okay, I learned this from her, and that doesn't mean that I can't take this lesson from my relationship with her, with me. And so that was what I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes this might be contradicting, but there's actually something so beautiful about a heartbreak, because it puts you in a position where you actually do get to just be hey, it's okay. And you get to give yourself all this love. And I'm so grateful for my heartbreaks, because they have given me the biggest shift ever. And they gave me the biggest realization. My last one, I remember just I was so sad. My housemate sat me down because they were so worried about me. And then I literally had this epiphany. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I don't need that person to love me, because I can love me.
Yeah.
And I'd never, ever realized that I can love me.
Yeah.
And then since then, it's this is great, because any other love is just added love.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
So here's a visualization for you, right?
Okay.
I want you to try, if you're listening to this, even if it's on the camera, just close your eyes for a moment.
Okay.
And just imagine you've got your heart in the middle of your chest. Okay, you've got this beautiful heart. It's full of love. It's overflowing. It's it's amazing. But there's all these experiences that have happened in your life that have put these walls, these big gates. Imagine these the gates of Mordor, in front of your heart. Giant stone gates. And every time you start to experience love or the sensation of love, these gates start to open. So you think of a relationship that you've been in, and these gates start to open, and it's through the dating process, you're like, oh my God, can I really reveal this beautiful, tender heart full of love that lives in my heart to this person that lives in my chest? And so you feel these gates open. And quite often what happens is when we experience heartbreak, we want to close these gates again, right? And then they probably get stronger. Every time we close them, they get stronger, because we're so afraid of this sensitive part. So keep your eyes closed, and I want you to imagine these gates opening and opening. And let's say you have one of the most prolific relationships you've ever had in your life, and the gates are open 50%, right? So they're not completely wide open. They're facing directly out. And the amount of love that is received in that relationship is just phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And let's say that relationship ends. And so the gates close a little bit. Let's say they close to 35%, but you do the grieving process. You sit there, you grieve, you acknowledge the beauty that existed in the relationship, and you learn to love those parts of yourself. And so what happens is the gates stop at 35%. So what happens the next time you're in a relationship is, rather than the gates having to open from 0, they're already 35% open. And so the next relationship you're in, they start to open again. And now instead of closing at 50 or stopping at 50, they can open to like 65. They're wider. More love comes in. So your next relationship, it feels even more exciting because there's even more opening. And let's say that one closes or finishes or completes for whatever reason and the gates close again. But this time they close to like 60%. Because you do the grieving process, because you understand the process of how to grieve and how to learn to love those parts of yourself. And so then the next time you fall in love, next time you meet someone, could be 5 years later, 10 years later, who knows? But now these gates can open 100% because they're already starting at 60. And that's the benefit of understanding how to grieve properly and actually really learning to love these aspects of yourself that you get shown through the relationships you've been in. And if someone has been single their whole life and avoided relationships, they don't know themselves.
Ooh.
They don't know themselves the way that someone that's been in a long-term relationship is. Because when you live with someone for a prolonged period of time, there is no hiding. And you will confront each other about your shit. How you deal with that, that's up to you. But yeah, so what happens is if you do the grieving process properly, the gates that stop love coming into your heart, they never go back to fully closed. And so that means every relationship you're in will only become deeper and deeper and deeper.
Wow. And what about for people who have gone through the grieving process and they're like, okay, kind of ready to get back on the dating bandwagon, and then they meet someone and then they're like, oh shit, they're really cool, and they kind of freak out because they're like, I don't want to go through this
100%.
heartbreak again. Is that normal, and how would you deal with it?
I mean, yes, it is, 100% normal, right? Like, our natural tendency as humans is to avoid pain. Simple, right? You put your hand near fire, you're going to pull it away, right? Like, we do not want to experience physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain. We don't want to. So, of course, those are normal. How you deal with them will dictate how much grieving process you've really done, right? Like, if you haven't gone all the way through properly, which means you'll understand your attachment style, you understand the way that, like, okay, well, what happened in the relationship? Why did it break down? Like, did they cheat? Okay, why did they cheat? Like, if he or she cheated, you are equally responsible for the cheating because you were in the relationship. That doesn't mean you did anything wrong. I'm not saying that it's your fault. I'm saying you are as equally responsible, because if you only put the blame on them, you're putting yourself in this hierarchy of like, well, I did nothing wrong ever. Everything I did in the relationship was 100% perfect, which is bullshit because you're a human. And so I'm not saying it's your fault. What I'm saying is, if you can take the 50% responsibility that is required of the relationship and go, okay, they obviously had their own inner shit they were working on, and so that had nothing to do with me, but I couldn't see it or feel it, or I didn't leave early. Maybe you could tell this was going to happen. You didn't go, hey, I deserve more than this and better. And like, maybe that was what the lesson should have been. But yeah, the way that you understand and process what's happened in the past and how you dealt with it and how you could change that in the future, and you bring that into your next relationship. So, there's nothing more attractive than, in my opinion, and I've heard this from multiple people, of like someone being able to articulate and communicate, hey, I really, really like you. And so much so that a part of me wants to run away. And I'm not really sure what it is, but, and all of a sudden, the whole, the trigger word vulnerability, if I'm being vulnerable in the relationship.
The courage to be brave.
Exactly. The courage to be honest.
To be honest.
Exactly. Then what happens is it gives the other person permission to be courage and honest. And they can meet you wherever they can meet you. And that will give you more data as to how the relationship could progress. So, Because you might have all these feelings and be like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And they could just go, oh, I don't feel that. And that's going to be heartbreaking into itself. But better now and honest than later when you've created more attachment, more story, more whatever. And maybe that's not true. Maybe that's their instant response because they've been heartbroken, and so that you also got to take things from like, what's their relationship history? How have they been heartbroken? And this is why relationships are so bloody hard, because we can't always take things on face value because we can quite often be acting from a past piece of scar tissue that still resides inside the body.
So you're saying communicate it?
Always,
yeah.
Always. And generally speaking, most of us are pretty average at it. But I also believe that when you have met someone that you're experiencing love with, there's usually a fair bit of trust there, because that's usually what creates the sensation of love. And so if there's trust there, there's probably the opportunity to be honest. And hopefully both of you are like, I've never felt this safe to be this honest before. And usually then that creates a much, much deeper layer of intimacy, because you're revealing parts of yourself that you're scared to reveal.
It's amazing when you like just communicate something with someone and then you resolve it and you're like, God, how easy was that? And you just have the hard conversations.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of hyper masculine motivational music when I work out and stuff, and or when I'm feeling lazy in business. And one of the quotes is, if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. But if you do what is hard, your life will be easy. And I really like that. I think it's very true.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, do the hard things because it'll get to where you want to be. And then life will be easy.
Well, I mean, also like...
Well, not easy, but...
It's just like you if you do what is hard frequently, then everything else becomes easy. Do you know what I mean?
I like that we interpreted that differently.
Yeah.
Because I take it as if you do what is easy, obviously you're not doing the things that are going to get to where you want to be. And then your life's going to be hard because you're like, oh my God, why am I not where I want to be?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Nice. We got sidetracked.
We did.
Anyway, okay, so this is very comforting to know that grieving is totally normal. I really hope that men are listening to this and understanding that grieving is totally normal.
Yeah.
Is it quite common for like guy mates to be like, oh, come on, let's go out and get on the beers, because they think that is what they need?
Oh, 100%. So, I remember a mate of mine, beautiful man, got married, love of his life. They were together for a fair while. She left him, just, decided she was going on a different path. He did nothing wrong. She did nothing wrong. It wasn't like, she just went down a different journey. She's, and I think touched on the fact that she'd probably denied an aspect of herself for a long time. Not like lesbian or anything like that, but just denied things that she wanted to do, and felt trapped, and she had put herself there. And there is nothing that this man would not have done to try to make it work. Like, and it just didn't matter what he did. It wasn't going to be enough for her. And it wasn't because of him. It was purely because she had lied to herself for a really long time. Anyway, it ended, right? And I wasn't back in Adelaide at the time, but I remember not long after going back, and I rang him up and I was like, hey man, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, just whatever. I was like, let's catch up for lunch. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. So we made time, caught up for lunch, and it was probably 3 years ago, I reckon. Yeah, it would have been pre-COVID. So we just caught up for lunch, and, it was maybe 6 months past the breakup. And I was like, look, man, I know it's been 6 months, and, I and I haven't been here and stuff, but I just want you to know that I'm always here for a chat, and anything you want to say or share. Like, I'm sure that I know you've had other boys around you, like the footy boys, because we're all in a footy club, but I also know them very well, and they may not have given you the space to communicate, and I know the type of man you are. And so, and gave him a hug, and he cried a little bit, and he tried to push it down, as we do. But just for me, it felt like, because all the footy boys did was, let's get on the beers, And I'm not saying that that's bad. if that's the only way you deal with emotion, it's really bad, right? But also, a very, very good way to deal with anger, rage, jealousy is through humor and good time. Like, imprinting positivity is very, very good for getting over negativity. But also, if you're just trying to stack it on top instead of excavate the bad and then feel where the bad was, and then fill it up with good, that's a much more longevity. Like it's a much better way to create longevity in your emotional journey. So, yeah, he went out on the piss a bunch of times, but that's not the type of dude he is either. Like, don't get me wrong, he'll have a blowout every couple of months, but he wasn't one of the boys that went out every weekend and took pills and got fucked up.
Yeah.
And so the way he processes shit is different. And that's why I made sure I made the effort to catch up with him for lunch and just give him the space and time. And, she ended up seeing one of the other footy guys, which was obviously even harder for him to deal with. And, so it was just one of those processes of like, he just needed time and space to grieve and someone to grieve with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, understanding your friends and who they are. Because I've seen a lot of guys, they'll go camping or they'll get fucked up. And after a prolonged period of drinking, the emotions will then come out, And so it's probably, I wouldn't say a misconception, but it's like guys drink so they can feel. The amount of times I've cried in my mate's arms or hugged him and stuff because we're drunk and we finally get permission to do the thing. And like forcing or telling men or having a dogmatic belief that they need to learn to do that without alcohol, like that's no different to saying, that in order to be a man you must blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's like it's just a dogma. It's another dogma. Is it the healthiest way? No. But if it's gonna get him there, so what? Like there is a lot of other bad shit going on the planet. I think a few boys go and have some beers so that they can cry and feel and tell each other they love each other. I did a post the other week. My dad and his mate did it. They got drunk. One of them's he's gone through a divorce, and the only time they can really talk about it with emotion is when they're drunk. And they got drunk and they came home, and they were sitting out the back talking about it. And Dad's telling me to give them advice, which was really beautiful.
Aww.
But and I gave a couple of sentences or whatever, and both of them just stopped and was like, "Never thought about that." I'm like, yeah, "Of course you didn't. That's why you're divorced." But and yeah. But do you know what I mean? It was like, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. No, that's a really interesting perspective that I never thought of it like that, where guys would probably. And now it makes so much sense where they're going to be more emotional with alcohol. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it, like I said, I'm not saying it's the healthiest way to do it.
Yeah.
But if that's what's going to help some guys get past the barrier of fear to then express, I'm sad, I'm lonely, I'm blah, blah, blah. And for their other mates to then sit there and go, man, I fucking understand. I love you. You're such a good dude. Don't worry about it. It's said with so much truth. It's said with so much truth in those circles, and a lot of people don't believe it, but I'm telling you right now, I've been there, and it's said with so much truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
It is.
So I'm conscious of your time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm really conscious of your time. Can I just quickly ask 2 more questions?
Sure.
Okay, first one is, should you cut the person you're trying to get over completely off? Because I know a lot of people kind of breadcrumb or like just keep we're just going to stay friends as soon as the heartbreak.
I made a video on this the other day. Yes, you should.
Yeah.
I do believe, this is my opinion, unless you have children or pets, and even if you have pets, I still think one of you should just take the pet and the other one should just deal with the grief of losing the pet, in my personal opinion. You should cut them off. I'm not saying forever. I just mean for a period of time so that you can process the grief and completely let go of the story of you and them being together again. And then, oh, hey, how you doing? And I don't believe you should actively make an effort in doing it. It should be like, oh, like, I live in the Gold Coast. I live in Burleigh. If I started to date someone here for a year, and our lives would probably enmesh a little bit, and then I would need to take time apart. And I'm not saying leave the Gold Coast, but it's like, okay. And we would need to have that conversation of like, okay, can you please not come to Familyhood because that's my place and I would really like to be able to keep going there and not see you every weekend.
So it's okay to say stuff like that?
100% it is. I think it's necessary, because otherwise you're just going to prolong this fucking thing, and you're just going to keep looping, and you're both going to put each other in an emotional process. And so what's going to happen is, like, let's say it's me, I'm going to see her at familyhood, she's going to look happy, I'm then going to critique that she's getting over the breakup faster than me, and she never fucking cared for me, and that her, you know, she's already fucking someone else, and now I'm going to hate myself even more. And, you know, like, it's going to make those stories intensify 1,000 times. Whereas, you know, and if you randomly see each other at a supermarket, don't go say hello. Just fucking walk away. Right? Yeah, so definitely cut off. And if you have been enmeshed in each other's lives for a little while, try to have a civil conversation around, okay, look, I would really like to do this, and I would really like to not see you there just for at least a fucking month or 2 months, you know? And it'll be hard because you have mutual friends. And so, you know, you may have to not go to parties for a little while so that you don't see her or see him, and potentially see them with another person, or see someone else hitting on them, because that's what's going to happen, because when everyone's single, that's what people do, you know? And rather than judge them and then judge the person that's hitting on them that you don't even fucking know, or maybe it's just a friend of yours chatting, but you think they're hitting on them because now they're fine. You know what I mean? It's like the stories that run in your head will go bonkers. So definitely try to separate, try to cut ties for a period of time. You know, that period of time is different for all people. And it also depends on how you broke up. So, yeah, but definitely, I believe, cut out for a period of time. And then if it naturally occurs that you see each other again, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Out of sight, out of mind.
It's very true and very valid. And, you know,
yeah.
it will still you'll still have to grieve, though.
Yeah. Definitely. And unfollowing on Instagram or
100%. Block. Yeah, don't just unfollow, like block. Because if you have mutual friends, then what will happen is, you know, you'll share my story, and my ex-girlfriend, who's also friends with you, will then see it. Whereas if you block someone, the chances of that happening is a lot lower. So just completely block.
Yeah.
Just for a period of time. It doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you'll never be friends. It's just so that you can go through the grieving process and manage your own emotional body. Don't sit there and be like, oh, I'm better. I'm more superior in my emotional intelligence, and I'm more spiritual, and, you know, no, just give yourself some fucking time.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about.
You had a second question.
I did, but I'm just conscious of your time.
Just do it.
Okay. I asked all the questions that got asked kind of in this episode, but this was a randomly kind of one. It said, not necessarily about heartbreak, but how do you go about being open to meeting a life partner? It's the one thing in life that you have no control of, and it feels unnerving to leave up to the universe. What advice do you have for people looking for their life partner?
Yeah, this is awesome. So a lot of people get it wrong in their manifestation of their dream partner, right? Especially a lot of people in the spiritual world, because they sit there and they go, write down all the qualities that you want in a partner and then go and be those, you know? And it's like, it's fucking, when I first started, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then after a while I was like, hang on, it doesn't make sense. I want a woman. Does that mean I need to be a woman? That's stupid. So, and then I heard this other thing, and Jordan Peterson has a little piece on it as well. So write down everything that you want in a partner, right? Everything, as much detail as you can, like the type of family they come from, how many siblings they have, you know, their attributes, their qualities, what type of job they have, like if you know that much, their skin color, their ethnicity.
Hard word.
Yeah. Write down everything, like 5 pages, 6 pages, like write it down. How do they deal with, what are their love languages? How do they deal with emotional volatility? Are they a business person? Are they, like, write it down, write everything down, right? Then here's the secret. Write down in equal detail the person that they would be attracted to. So for me, if I write down all the qualities about a woman, my dream woman, now write down her dream man. And then my job is to become that man.
Love that, because then you'll attract that person.
The polarity, right?
Yeah.
So if I write down, you know, she's this, and this, okay, this type of woman, because she's my dream woman, so I get to create her. What is she attracted to? what are the, like, because she's not going to be attracted to me the way I am, because she's my dream woman. And my dream woman, just like your dream man, is going to make you better than you are. That's why they're your dream person. So then write down everything that they have, and then write down in equal detail the person that they want to marry. And then your goal, your mission, your only mission is to then become that person. Because by becoming that person, you will put yourself in places and experiences that will attract that type of person, that type of partner. So that's how it works. And Jordan Peterson has this thing of like, rather than looking of like, where's my dream partner that can do all these things for me, he says something along the lines, I wrote down the other day, of like, if you gave everything you had, like everything you had to a partnership, then who would you become? So it's very, very similar of like, you know, rather than being like, oh, how do I find a partner that makes me more of who I am? How do I just be more of who I am? How do I just be the best version? How do I be cleaner, tidier, more organized? How do I make more money, more passionate? Like whatever it is. Because if you're looking for a partner that's going to do those things for you, you're destined for failure.
So in a way, do you pretend that you already have this person because you're like, who would I have to be to attain it? Or do you mean, well, yeah.
I think you allow the longing. So I have a look. So the other night, Saturday night, you know, I want to get married. I'm 36. I want to get married, have kids. And I don't really create a dating scenario for myself where that's possible, right? I see multiple women at the same time. And I don't have a problem with that. I'm very clear and communicative and, you know, but being with multiple women at the same time doesn't really energetically send out the signal or the sign that I am looking for my wife, right? And I'm aware of this, you know, I'm not stupid. I teach this shit. So, and I justify it to myself. I'm like, no, but I want to be erotically open and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I came back from Adelaide, and every date that I have tried to organize this year has fallen through. They've cancelled, they've postponed. I've been on 2 dates that, you know, just were, one was just for a first time catch up, which, you know, didn't go anywhere. And the other one was a second time date, and it was just like, I was meant to have a podcast after that. And so I had to leave early, and then I got home and the podcast cancelled. So everything this year has just forced me to be on my own. And last Saturday, I just felt lonely, you know, and I put my headphones in. I walked up and down Burleigh Beach on my own at like 7 p.m. and cried, listening to love songs, and allowed all that loneliness and that feeling of, you know, longing, all that longing for partnership, I allowed it to be in my body. And then I woke up the next day and felt great. You know, I was like, okay, it's got nothing, you know, I need to love these parts of myself rather than get that quick fix of intimacy with a lover. And, you know, it's been 1 week, or not even, like 4 days. And the amount of interactions with women I've had in this 4 days, and not dates or anything, but just way more positive, you know, kind of flirty, whatever. It's like, holy shit, the moment I felt it and then let it go, and I allow my longing of a relationship to drive my positive action to stay committed to the things that I want, then I attract what I want. So it's not about forgetting about it. Like, sure, let go of the attachment, but allow the emotional desire to drive your action, because emotion drives action, right? Simple as that.
So it's okay to want a relationship.
Absolutely.
Because you know how some people are like, oh, you always find it when you least expect it, or when you like don't want one, it'll come.
Which is true. So let go of the attachment. Like, don't look for a relationship, but allow the longing for one to drive you to take action in your life that will put you in like, if you're longing for a relationship and you sit at home every night reading book, watching movies, you're never going to meet anyone, right? And I don't mean at night, like during the day. Like, if you never put yourself in a circumstance to meet someone, then that longing's just not actually creating any actionable movements towards the direction you want. You know, it's like, oh, I have this longing to be a millionaire. But yeah, but all you do is scroll fucking Instagram and TikTok. So it's like, no, allow the longing to be a millionaire to drive you to invest money and learn real estate or learn crypto or learn whatever. So it's like, don't hold on to the outcome, but allow the longing to drive action.
Ah, love that. Bang. Mic drop.
Mic drop number 2.
And we will end it there. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
And your honesty and how much you just love and care for other people really comes through. So I appreciate it.
Well, I actually love love more than I love people.
I love love more than I love people.
Yeah.
Aren't people love?
Well, they can be, but they have a lot of stuff around love. So, sometimes I will be very confronting because love is behind the confrontation. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes,
That's awesome.
I do. I love people that love, and I love people to feel love.
Yeah. Oh, see, another mic drop. Everything. I hope you guys have felt some comfort and support, and we are sending you tons of love and support because we know that this can be a really tough time, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. If you guys did enjoy this or got something from it, feel free to send it to a friend or click that share button. You can tag us. Tyran, what is your Instagram?
Tyran.Mowbray on Instagram and Tyran Mowbray on Facebook too.
Perfect. It'll be all in the show notes. And mine is Andy.Bentley_. And I'll see you guys next week for another episode. Bye.
Whoop, whoop.